Hello.
Hello, hello.
All right. Hello, Karen. Hello, Sharon. Hello, Brad. Gee, it looks like we have quorum.
Right
So-
at 7 p.m.
Right. Why don't we get started? We have quorum, so I will call this meeting to order at 7 o'clock straight up.
Very good.
First of all, thanks everyone for attending on what's usually the hardest meeting to get a quorum for during the year in August.
August.
So thank you all for making the time to attend. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Does anyone have any comments or corrections or any additions?
No, I thought it was fine.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you, Karen.
So the motion, I propose that we approve the minutes.
Do I hear a second? I've got one from Brad. All in favor of approving minutes as written, raise your hand. It's unanimous.
Well, Julie didn't vote.
Oh, sorry, I did. I just not got the video on.
Oh,
There we
wait a
go.
minute. I didn't see Julie.
Right,
Oh.
there we go.
Welcome, Julie.
I
Glad
did.
you
Hello.
made it.
I'm sorry. It's like 7:02. You guys launched right in. Boy.
We did. You gotta be, we're cracking here.
Okay. I'm sorry. It's lagging. Okay.
I should let you know
All
that
right. So Karen, great job. This is the first time I think I've ever seen that we've approved them without any changes. Okay, moving right along. For the chair's update, I have a few things to report and update on. First of all, we had, as Matt, I think, pointed out last time, we had a couple of green card applicants. I've talked to both of them. They both look good. Matt has spoken with one of them, and we'll have someone to, I hesitate to say replace Julie, but to take her seat. Replacing Julie is not
I
so.
would replace Julie.
Oh,
I hope,
shucks.
I hope that person has the English language down.
Queen's English.
When do you
So-
move? Julie?
Mid-October.
Mid-October. Okay, so you're good until you're good at least through September, right? With us?
I can squeeze out one more. Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know if this is the right time to say this, but I was talking with Janice Setti, and she was effusive in how much you've helped her and all the work you did, and how enjoyable it was to work with you.
No.
So I just want to thank you for that. And I also want to note that most people who go off the committee don't go off in a grand fashion as you're doing. But so anyway, I want to thank you for being so helpful for her.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
All right. Next topic is the hiring of a new director of sustainability. That process is moving along. Kate Hodges said that I think we're over 30 candidates, 15 of which exceeded her expectations. And some number of those 15, or maybe all 15, were presented with a question to prepare a written answer for. And I believe they all did. Brad volunteered and reviewed at least some of those, right, Brad?
I believe I reviewed 10, and those were the 10 that did respond. So some people didn't. But
Okay.
I was really appreciated the chance to do that. It didn't take me that long. There were 7 which I said were really solid, and 3 I said, you don't necessarily need to interview them. So I'm pleased with the applicants.
Yeah. So the next step here is that some number of those, I think maybe all of those, will be interviewed in person. And I had offered to Kate that I would do that. It turns out I'll be out of town. So Janet has volunteered to step in and to interview them, which I think is great. Because Janet, having been a chair, I think you can talk to them to get a sense of what it will be like to work with them. I think that's one of the critical things I was looking for, is to see what will they be like to work with. So
I got the copy of their resumes and statements today, and I think there were 6 or 7 candidates that we're interviewing
great.
next week.
So on the whole, this seems to be progressing so far smoothly and well. And hopefully it'll continue to be that way, and we'll have someone on board. And I don't know, I'm guessing maybe October. Might be hard for someone to interview in late August and join in September, although who knows, we'll see. But the good news is things are moving. We'll have someone on board fairly soon.
All right, those interviews are going to be exhausting. 7 interviews.
Yeah, that's a lot. So Janet, thank you again.
2 mornings.
Yeah, that makes sense. Split it up amongst a couple days. Okay, one more update. Separately, I had a meeting yesterday with Dave Wood and Pamela Cady. This was prompted by a question I posed to Janice Setti about solar saturation, if she could explain it and what's the status of it. And she said, why don't let me check and see if Dave would want to do that. So Dave said, sure, I'll meet with Jerry. And he and Pamela met with me yesterday for 45 minutes, and he's offered more time if need be. So I think that's very positive. I feel like I'm getting off to a good first step with Dave. But at any rate, here's what we discussed. My question was, what is the solar saturation here? What are the details behind it that appear to be limiting the growth of PV in town? I'd heard from various folks that it was this or it was that. So I got it from the horse's mouth. So we have 2 distribution circuits in town. The distribution circuits are downstream of the substation. Upstream of the substation, it's a transmission line that comes in to town. It's fed into a transformer. The transformer steps down the voltages and distributes it. There are 2 transformers, one for each circuit. On one of the circuits, when solar production is high and energy consumption is low, we drop the load as seen by CMLP drops to 1.8 megawatts. He said, that's the worst case. He said, we do see this just about every single day, but the worst case is that it drops to about 1.8 megawatts on this one circuit. The other circuit drops down to, I don't see it in my notes, but I think he said about 5 megawatts, and he's not concerned about that. But the issue is that were this number to go negative, it would mean that Concord, for that circuit, is producing more energy than we consume, and it would send current or attempt to send current back the other way. When that reverse flow current would reach the transformer at the substation, basically it would trip. A fault would be generated by the control circuitry saying, this looks like an abnormal condition. Historically, that's what it would have been in utility operation. But these days, with so much solar generation, which was unknown previously, there's a real possibility that we could try to send current back the other way, and it's a natural thing. It's an okay thing. But the way utility control circuits are set up, they view that as a problem, and they would shut off the circuit. So we, as a town, we need to make sure that doesn't go negative. So the way CMLP is managing that is basically they're not allowing any new large PV installations on that particular circuit. Large meaning greater than 50 kilowatts. Actually, let me rephrase that. They won't allow it without a battery being installed at the somewhere for that. So if you got 50 more, if you have an installation that looks like greater than 50 kilowatts, if you want to get town approval, you have to install a battery for it. He said this does not affect residential installations because they're by comparison relatively small. Although he and Pamela kind of joked about that. There's apparently one residence in town that's consuming 150 kilowatts. It's kind of shocking. I didn't bother to ask who it was or where it was because I knew they wouldn't tell me, but it's curious.
I think we know who it is.
Okay, well, maybe you do. I don't. I guess I might be able to guess, but at any rate. So, hello, Haney. Glad you're joining us.
Yep.
So that's the story on the solar saturation.
What's the long-term solution? Because that problem of solar saturation, I think, is a frequent problem in California, by the way, where prices go negative.
Yeah.
Well, pricing going negative is a little bit of a different situation, but I wouldn't surprise me that California has faced this already too. The long-term situation, I think, is a lot of battery storage.
So I have a couple comments to it. This is an excuse that CMLP has used for now 3 or 4 years. And in the industry where there are power generators, conventional power generators, when they don't need those power generators, they shut them down, and that's called curtailment.
Right.
And but for some reason, they don't do that with solar. So you could build a 50 kilowatt, 100 kilowatt generator, and CMLP could shut it down whenever they wanted to.
Well, or
that
CMLP could
was-
have a farm of batteries.
If that was the deal. But
I'm not,
I think
not-
Brad's right.
it's
because when I
possible
had-
that Dave Wood doesn't want more of these. I don't know if that should go in minutes or not. But this has been an excuse for 3 years, and it'll continue to be an excuse until they decide to solve the problem.
well, I'll add a couple of opinionated comments here.
That was opinionated.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to match you here. So sort of jumping ahead, I had asked Dave about what were the plans for batteries. And he gave me a mitigated response. Basically, his comment was storage is a priority, but it's in the queue behind advanced metering infrastructure and time of use rates, which, as I said, I view that as a mitigated response. On the other hand, as I understand it, I don't think CMLP has control over individual solar installations. So I don't think they can shut it off so easily.
Well,
So
there are ways.
in my view, and I have a little experience, I actually worked for a utility company a long time ago briefly. This issue of current flow is a big deal to the utilities. So I think it's a real issue for Dave, but at the same time, I share your view, Brad, that they appear to be dragging their feet a little bit on this.
Yeah.
At any rate, I think that's the sort of the tail end of the solar saturation issue. We talked about, so I'm looking at my notes, trying to present them in a
Jerry,
coherent fashion.
does Matt have his hand up? It looks like maybe Matt has his hand up.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't time of use billing be a critical precondition for doing residential storage solutions? I mean, you know, if you can get time of use billing, then it starts to make sense to utilize storage and to reap the benefits of providing energy when it's needed and storing energy when it's not.
Well, I think I think time of use rates and storage attack two different problems, but there's overlap in their solution space. So time of use rates would help because they would encourage people to consume when there's an excess production, or more specifically, when rates would be lower. But it doesn't solve the issue of potential reverse flow of the current. So that's where the.
No,
the
but
battery-
I think that you, first of all, could build an economic case, for investing in storage as a resident, if you had those time of use rates available. And of course, those time of use rates would tend to help on the, level out consumption and production just by the nature of the relative costs. So I think it's actually pretty important. I doubt if you can make a good economic case for implementing a residential storage solution without it.
Get some backup.
Could
Well, not on the
could be the
customer
case.
side.
That's an interesting point. Matt, if you're okay, I'd rather not go too deeply into it right now because it would take us a little bit off agenda. But this all factors into where we want to go, not even long-term, shorter term. And for example, whether somehow we need to convince CMLP that, well, actually, they need the advanced metering interface and they need the time of use rate.
What is the ETA for these two things?
Well, see, that's where I feel it was also a mitigated response. He did not answer that. I asked that directly. His response was, that's when he told me, he said, well, it's behind, it's in the strategic queue behind time of use rates and
What I understand is that the ETA on advanced metering depends on, there's a new subcommittee about advanced metering that's concerned with our EMI and people all dying because of the Wi-Fi meters. So they might have to build out the entire broadband so that they can do wired solutions everywhere. And so I think like 5 years.
Yeah.
Could be, I wouldn't be at all surprised if 5 years from now we're working on that. That's just that may be a pessimistic, but.
well, in the interest of time, let me move on a little bit. There's some related topics here. I also asked about what is the status of the CMS project in terms of the net zero direction for the school. So he said that CMLP has hired a consultant, SDA Solar Design Associates. They've been hired for a feasibility study to figure out what we need to do there. And I believe he said they're about 25% along in that process. So I guess the good news is that that's moving along. The bad news is we don't have a whole lot of visibility into it. And I'd like it to move faster, but then that's all kind of gated by the whole schedule for the middle school. He also mentioned, trying to remember the context for this. I think it was either for the middle school or just putting batteries in town. Because I asked about what is the status of putting batteries, say, at the W.R. Grace or at the landfill. And he said they've been talking to some providers about PPAs for this, and they've run into a little bit of a disagreement in that the providers want to manage the batteries. CMLP wants to manage the batteries. So I guess the way this is shaping up in terms of a potential PPA for a solar array at CMS is that it's coming down to who's going to control the batteries.
The battery is independent from the PV panels?
They would,
From the farm, basically.
Well, not necessarily. The current thinking, at least by Charlie Parker and myself, is that Charlie's on the Sustainability Subcommittee of the CMS Building Committee, is that the storage would be on site at the new school.
Yeah, but
It
who's
doesn't-
operating? Oh, on the school, you mean? But it depends who's operating in the facility at the school, right?
No, not who's operating the facility at the school, but who's operating the actual battery.
Well, and the panels, if the two go hand in hand.
Well, the two go hand in hand. The question is, with the battery, there are several different potential revenue streams. And that depends on how you manage them. And so there's a little bit of a disagreement on, I don't know if it's a disagreement, but a different approach. The PPA provider wants to manage them because they would then receive the extra revenues. I think CMLP wants to manage them because they can provide greater value, monetary and non-monetary, to the town. Okay, one other update. I asked about the Fenn School because I had heard from someone, I'm not sure where or whom, but the Fenn School was considering installing PV. And Dave and Pamela confirmed that I guess it was 2 years ago, Fenn was speaking with CMLP about their interest in installing PV at Fenn. There were some issues that CMLP raised. The main one was the need for a battery there. And because their proposed array would be greater than 50 kilowatts. Fenn said they would go back and look at this and were likely to start a fundraising campaign for it. They have not talked to the town since. So it sounds like that project at Fenn may be paused, or I don't know if it's killed, but I'll try and reach out to Fenn to see if I can understand more details of what's going on there. At any rate, that's my update. Quite a few different things. Obviously, lots of stuff going on in town. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. Janet, you're up for.
Nothing to report since the EV working group has not met since our last meeting. We're meeting tomorrow, so bad timing. But I think the main action is the the climate-friendly homes and vehicle event. And
Right.
one thing I did do, for which Jen, or the working group asked me to do, was write a letter to the Concord Journal, which I hope you all read, saying how wonderful electric vehicles are and whatever.
Yep, I saw that. Thank you for writing that and getting it in. It's good to see.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, that's a good segue into I'll call it Jan's event, the Climate Friendly Homes and Vehicle event, I think is what she's calling it. So this is planned for September 13th. At our last meeting, Jan presented the plans for it, and a number of folks signed up to help. As I commented earlier, I know Julie's been very much involved with that. Has anyone else been able to make any progress on their items for the event?
I sent a couple of bulletins out to email lists yesterday.
Great.
Yeah, I've posted it on the Cooler Concord Facebook page and also on Nextdoor West Concord.
I want to point out, we did skip an agenda item.
We did?
Which I was supposed to make a quick update, which would be.
Oh, that was, hold on. That was the draft agenda.
Oh.
Oh.
So
Good. I got the wrong one open.
You were demoted.
So
I'll
I'll
you had.
I'll offer a mea culpa that I didn't send the
Good,
formal
good.
agenda out.
I had two
In
versions
advance.
open. The two versions open.
But hang on just a minute. We'll get to you, Brad. But I'm glad to see you're so enthusiastic and ready to jump in.
I sent out a couple of, I don't know, a dozen, maybe like 24 emails to people that on, as Julie did, to people that have lists for them to
Great.
post flyers and
Great.
got a few
Great.
like that.
And I drafted some text for some tweets. Hope they found it useful.
Somehow the town's Mimecast thing
was
made
weird.
the link bad.
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah, that was tricky. I have a question though regarding that. Should we register for that event? Does anybody know the answer to that? Because I think Jan said she was going to be using the registration to know how many, what size room to put. I'm like, well, I don't know if I'm necessarily going to be in a room because I'm there to help whatever. So I wasn't sure if we should register, and do I register for heat pumps or EVs or
So that's a good question. I don't know the answer. One could imagine from some perspectives, it'd be good to have a room that's maybe a little too big, and other perspectives, it may be good to have a room a little too small.
But
I can ask Jen tomorrow. Ask that
Yeah.
question.
are
Okay,
you seeing her tomorrow?
Yeah, the
Okay.
EV working group is meeting tomorrow.
I think
Can
that
we try
definitely
to-
should be run by Jan, because, from a COVID point of view, she might need to tell Harvey Wheeler, like, how many people are going to be there, right? Including anyone who's part of the organization.
Right.
right.
Yeah. So she
Good
doesn't,
point.
does she want us to use that registration, or does she have a different way of
Okay,
some other list that she wants us on?
Yeah.
that's, I'm glad you raised that. So Janet, you or Sharon, if you could just let the committee know once you figure that out, then we can do as appropriate.
Oh, wait, point of order. Are we allowed to do that?
I can send information to you. You just don't reply all.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, right. Okay, so related to that, I wanted to ask who's available for the meet and greet. I'm planning to be there. Sounds like Sharon, you're planning to be there too. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Not me,
Janet?
I'm afraid.
Julie?
I'm sorry, I'll be in England again. Sorry.
For you.
Okay.
But Patrick's coming to the event. Patrick is registered as a customer, so you guys can all do your greatest sales jobs on him.
Okay, so I think we're in pretty good shape in terms of supporting her. Jan is feeling very good about what CSEC has done so far, and I think we're lined up for additional assistance there. So thank you all. Okay, next agenda item. Brad, you're up.
Okay.
Hmm.
So I just wanted to show this website that I think I've talked about, websites to engage residents, and this is one thing which was put up in Newton. Through Mass Energize, we work with all these communities, and the guy gave a talk on this. And okay, I would have to share the screen, I guess, to do that. I hit share screen, and I say, let me hit that one there. Share it. So this is called NewtonEnergyCoach.org. This is a WordPress site that was put up, and it's very simple, and it's about, so imagine this could say Concord Energy Coach, and it could have there's a bunch of coaches. I'm showing you meet the coaches. So they're real people that live in town, and they have different areas of expertise. So when you come to the site, you can ask questions on the site, or you can contact a coach. ask a question. In our case, we have coaching for heating systems through Abode, through the managed, but that's fine. We can, can be a portal to that, but it can also be a portal to someone to talk about solar. I'm thinking about solar. What does it mean for me, or batteries, or something? So it's kind of I think of it as a simple, easy to use and inviting site. And it's also, in this case, it's connected into their version of the Mass Energized site, where you can go and you can find out more about going solar or doing, upgrading your heating and cooling, things like that. I like it because it's really simple. I'm thinking that Mass Energized may try to package this as a service for communities, customize it for them and support it for them. But it's also something separately from that if Concord wanted to use it, it might be kind of cool. I'd like to get people's impression of it after they look at it. So speaking with a coach, you would go on and select a time from a calendar, and they would give you 20 minutes of their time.
But
It's
Brad, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to interrupt. I was just going to say, so I know we have heat pump coaches through CMLP, right? And
Right.
and also EV coaches through CMLP. But where would you find solar coaches, for example? I mean, because those guys are on staff, I think, right? They're not volunteers. So where would you find?
We would have to find anybody we wanted to put on here would have to be somebody sort of knowledgeable enough and able to talk to residents. It's something we can invent. Okay. Someone like Brian. He does a lot of solar.
Yeah.
And so so this would be a portal to any of those. And I don't know how much value it would add. It would add some value. I just find it as kind of like our community is here to help. This committee could help manage the process. A couple of us could be on there as volunteer coaches if we wanted. I will say that I've been trying to contact the man who designed the site, and he doesn't respond to email very well, even though he runs a company. He must be on vacation. But I've now tried him 3 times. But I'm sure that I've heard that they're quite willing for other communities to use this. It's just a tool. Mm-hmm. They're getting fairly good uptake. They're getting 1 or 2 a day, I think, of different coaching requests in Newton. Newton's a pretty big community, but they're not really publicizing it. Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering how it would interface with the EV specialist that the CMLP works with. Would it? You don't know whether it'd be able to directly link to him, or whether there should be other people as well, or whether that would muddy the waters.
It's a good question. It doesn't necessarily muddy the waters. He could be the EV guy on the site. But in this case, in Newton's case, they're all residents that are, volunteering their time. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't have to be that way. But we could, if your question was, I want to talk to someone that has a Bolt, you could have some, be able to ask somebody questions about that car or something like that. Mm-hmm. I don't know, just something I think is a nice little site. I just wanted to show that.
How would this relate to or connect with Cooler Concord?
Well, we're not really using Cooler Concord. We have a little newsletter that goes out, but we haven't been pushing we haven't been advertising the site. It could work. It could relate entirely to it. It could be because, like the Newton group did, it could link to actions on that site and get people to go there. We just haven't had the bandwidth, someone to run that, to manage that site.
I guess, so I find the site interesting. I looked at it before the meeting. But I'm a little concerned about, not even sure how to phrase it, yet another website.
Yeah.
I agree,
And
Jerry, yeah.
I don't have a particular solution in mind, but I think we need some sort of consistency of message or consistency of channel.
Definitely.
Maybe, well, separately, I'll tie this back in, but separately, I've heard in a couple places that, or from a couple people, that information on sustainability projects and things like EVs and heat pumps, it's hard to find in Concord. Yes, there are websites, but it's not obvious how you get to that information. So a potential project for us, and we'll discuss these sorts of things in a moment, but a potential project for us might be, I don't know, revamping our web presence.
Well, so there's a lot of information on Concord's website about heat pumps, and maybe too much, and maybe it's just too much text, and maybe it's hard to, and if you don't know the question you're going to ask, it's hard to figure out where to go. But there's lots and lots of information, probably too much.
The feedback I've gotten is not that there's not enough. It's that, how do we find it?
Yeah, exactly. I will mention one more thing about coaching, which is only tangentially related. But I've been doing a fair amount of coaching, mostly in Acton, because of the what CMLP has in Concord, and I'm doing it in person. I go over to someone's house. I ask them if they're vaccinated to go, and if they're okay, and then go over to their house and walk through it and get a sense of what they're dealing with. And whereas a lot of the coaching that we have, the abode coaching, they do it virtually. And you walk through the house with a phone and you kind of show them the stuff. But that certainly wouldn't work for me as a coach. And I don't think it necessarily works for residents, because it's kind of a little bit of hand-holding. But they're very gun shy about doing anything in person.
Can I just, I'd like to echo Jerry's point, because I just feel like in the few years that I've been with this, I joined and it was all cool at Concord, and now we've kind of gone away from that. And there's been I feel like there's been multiple websites and initiatives, and they're all terrific. Sorry, that's the sound of jet skis. They're all terrific, and the stuff that everybody's doing is really, really important. But if nobody finds their way there, then it just doesn't work. And I think there's a lot to be said for like bringing it into one place, doing a lot of advertising for like, this is where you find it. But just keeping a consistency, just like Jerry said, and keeping a certain branding going, and keeping that name alive. Everybody got used to Cooler Concord. It's like, this is cool. We had lots of people on board, and then we just sort of disbanded it, really.
Well, we didn't disband it. It just didn't get used. But this is actually, I see this as an attempt to put things in one place.
But right now, Brad, it seems like, I was just looking, I sort of agree with the statement that it is hard to find the information, right? I sort of, because I went personally through the experience and I tried. So, and I just finished my project. I have my air source heat pump installed, But if it weren't for finding a contractor who dealt with a boat and dealt with all the stuff and dealt with all the paperwork and dealt with everything, I probably would have taken me about 3 times more time.
Good.
Right. So I was lucky. I had a good contractor who was willing to basically do a lot of work and manage it and advise and bring advice to do it. But when I looked at the site, first of all, it goes pretty much everything goes through the concordmass.gov site or whatever that is. And I think the interaction with that site is extremely difficult. I find it, right? It's not a user-friendly site. They jam-packed too much information in there. And it keeps bringing you to that page with the bridge that takes 3/4 of the UI, right? All the time, right? It's just like poor design. It's just poor design. The search doesn't give you relevant information. It gives you stuff from 6 years ago up on top of the search, right? So there's a bunch of stuff that could be improved with what we have, but I like the idea of consolidating and then branching out. You know, CMLP wants to have their own website, fair enough. But, you know, at the end of the day, for somebody as a user who's interested in trying to go to a place where, hey, I'm interested in EV or solar panels or heat pumps, it would be nice to try and go to one place and then go to more specialty sites.
Right. Now, the thing about a coach, now the question, it wouldn't necessarily work for you, but let's say you were starting on this project and you said, well, I've heard about heat pumps. Let me go do some research. I'm going to go and I can find some stuff on the web here, maybe some good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But if you were to go to someone who coaches, they're going to ask you a few questions and steer and probably narrow down the direction that you're going to go. Maybe you're going to start investigating some things you shouldn't bother investigating. And maybe a board was helpful for that. But that's why this kind of a one-stop place. I want to solve my energy needs. I want to investigate solar. Well, let's first ask you for a few questions and get you going in the right direction and show you that information that's hard to find. That's kind of the idea.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense. I think you just have to think about accommodating the idea of some people like to interact with a coach. Some others may want to investigate their own thing, then maybe afterwards go to a coach and just, you know, right? I mean, it needs to be a little bit that model a little bit back and forth.
And people have to know there's a coach available anyway.
Right, and it has to be visible. The coach needs to be visible as one of the options available to, you know, we can give you advice, we can recommend, we can walk you through the process, walk you through what you need to think about, ask you some questions to pre-qualify.
Strikes me that this is kind of arguing for a kind of a redesign of the home page of Cooler Concord, so that we can direct people appropriately. I don't know, we don't need to get into the details here, but let me just ask one sort of historical question. How was the work for Cooler Concord funded, or was it pro bono?
Okay. In 2017, the town manager at that time, Chris, gave us like a whole bunch of money to run that fair and build this website, and also do a bunch of rebate programs. Jill Appel was very convincing, and she'd been talking to him for 2 years, and she finally got him to do that. It was like $75,000 that the town spent on that whole thing. The website we designed the WordPress version of the website, which was pretty successful, for about $10,000 or something, working with Bartlett Interactive. So that was a
redesign of the first version.
Oh, that was the first version. Then, but that was not necessarily that maintainable. Mm-hmm. It worked well, but so that was a prototype for what we've been doing at Mass Energize the platform that is more maintainable, more actionable, where you go and, you can easily update content, you can do lots more things. And we're going to continue working on that platform to make it more useful.
There was also a problem with that first version in that the town, well, this is a committee website, and it's not part of the town website, and we don't want that. And so much of the content was incorporated by Kate Hanley into the town website.
Yeah.
And then the new version of the Cool to Conquer website is entirely different. As part of Mass Energize, it's not really linked to CSEC. So I think it passes muster. Have I got that right, Brad?
I don't think they know about it.
You weren't listening, were you, Matt?
So
Somebody's paying to maintain the domain.
I think that people are aware that the Cooler Concord website exists. It's just that, yeah, it's using a different platform. And I think you're glad that it's on a different platform than Civic Plus, which is the platform that the town website uses. That's very rigid, in its way of presenting content. So you might notice that the schools don't use the town website platform. So I think that you're better off staying away from it, personally.
Who's hosting the Newton one? Do you know, Brian? It was custom designed, but they're also maintaining it and hosting it by themselves, or what?
I'm not sure where it's hosted, but it costs nothing really to host it. It costs more effort to support it, because you have to have all those people behind it, and they have to be paying attention, and they have to be doing stuff. The hosting, might be $120 a year or something.
Julie?
Brad, yeah, why wouldn't you? So I really like the new coaching idea. I don't think any of us is against it. I think it's a great idea. But why wouldn't you, rather than bring in yet another new platform? I'm not in favor of that, because I just see it as being kind of a little bit fragmented and too many sites, and it gets confusing. And I like what Haney said about consolidate and then have places that you can branch out to depending on what you're interested in. Why wouldn't you kind of take that coaching idea and fold it into the Mass Energize website, which you just said has a lot of flexibility and you can change content and that kind of thing?
Right. So we could say, I guess it's a question of what works for people. The Mass Energize site could have, we can configure a button that takes you to the page where you contact a coach. Right. And then it's effectively rolled in. And the fact that it's a WordPress page as opposed to a JavaScript page doesn't really matter.
doesn't make any difference, as long as you can create the link.
Okay.
I mean, with WordPress in a JavaScript site, a little bit more cumbersome adding content, right? That's sort of little intricacies of doing that, but I guess
so the JavaScript site, the local community doesn't have to do any JavaScript.
Right.
They just
the content update. I mean, is there an admin tool with this?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd love to show it to you.
Yeah.
Well, why don't we pause this conversation? I think this is very interesting, and seems to me something important for us to do at some point. And I think the bigger question is, well, what is it that we think we want to do, in the next 9, 12, 15 months or longer? And that's the so this is a strategy discussion I'd like to have. That's a continuation of what we talked about last time. Last time we reviewed the polling that we did as a group, and the polling indicated pretty clearly two items in particular to focus on. One is residential energy efficiency, and the other is commercial residential efficiency. So I'd like to dig into those more tonight, largely in a brainstorming fashion, kind of like what we've been doing for the last few minutes regarding websites and the Newton Energy Coach site. I'd like to kind of broaden that. The general question that I think we need to answer, there's two and they're related. The first, I don't know which one's first and which one's second. One of them is kind of, can we walk and chew gum at the same time? Can we do more than one thing? Can we, for example, can we spend some effort focusing on residential consumption at the same time as focusing some effort on commercial? Or do we as a committee really need to just choose one and go at that hard? So I've prepared a list of some ideas to spark some discussion. Let me find that and present it. Let's see here.
Jerry, I want to apologize in advance that I have friends coming over from out of town around 8:30, and I'm going to just drop off at that time. Thankfully, there's a lot of
I
people.
don't accept your apology. We can talk about that later. Hang on here, but okay. Thank you for alerting me. All right, can you see my PowerPoint slide?
Yep.
Okay. So I've got a similar slide here for approaching the commercial sector. But I've tried to kind of distill a number of ideas into some structure or some category. Let me just walk through these real quickly, and then we can dive into it more in a brainstorm fashion. So the first item here, go all in on Concord Goes or Heats Electric. This is the effort that Brad and Sharon are working on with Jan and others. And I attended my first meeting of this, I guess, earlier this week. It seems to me that there's a project plan, but the details of it in terms of what exactly they want to do are not yet well defined. Brad, correct me if you feel I'm wrong on any of this. That could be one thrust for us as a committee. That is just go all in on this with this group and actively support whatever they're going to do. Of course, we would hopefully be involved in influencing what they might want to do, but whatever it is, that would be our thrust. Another one, not necessarily mutually exclusive, would be to promote what we've done with Your Sustainable Home Now. We've got these beautiful brochures. Kate gave me a box of them that are sitting here in my office. But due to COVID, I don't think we really took full advantage of that work. You know, we had plans for some educational meetings. We could resurrect those. We could focus on tabling events or partnering with schools or all of the above. But the thrust could be promoting, leveraging what our previous work was on our sustainable home. And then another one, this one's a little out of left field because we haven't talked about this before, but we could develop a home energy scorecard program. This is something that CAB feel strongly about. It's in the sustainability plan. My own view is I think this could be very effective long-term. It's not a short-term thing. But there's a lot of challenges with it.
Right.
But this is another possible thrust. So this is all on the residential side.
Right.
Let me shift gears for the moment, show you what I've thought about in terms of the commercial sector. And then we'll begin to brainstorm. So before I dive into this, I should have mentioned when I was giving a recap of my meeting with Dave Wood, he confirmed that very little has been done with the commercial sector. He said the commercial sector represents 52% of his load. And so he even thought that there was room to grow with the efficient lighting program and rebates. That was the uptake on that was less than what he had hoped for. So that leads to this first bullet which is a really kind of basic one, which is to ensure that businesses know about what the programs are currently in place. And by the way, I should mention these were recommended to me by Kate Hanley before she left. So, there's some different things we could do, just kind of very basically, maybe even almost on a one-on-one basis, reaching out to our commercial entities in town. A separate thing, this second one here, is to engage with the Concord Business Partnership. I'm not familiar with this group, but apparently it's a group in town that has membership from various Concord businesses, and they like doing programs with outside groups, as I understand it. We could maybe try and do something with them. Kate pointed out that Newton has some experience in this area, and that we could gain some knowledge from what they've done in Newton to maybe start some sort of partnership with Concord Business Partnership, perhaps leading to initially this first item, just helping the businesses know what's available. I mean, I would think an organization such as a Concord Business Partnership would want to know for their members that there are programs available to them. And they might also be an avenue through which we could reach those businesses and let them know about these programs. Yet another one is to establish a commercial recognition program for businesses that have made progress towards our climate goals, towards reducing their carbon or energy footprint. This might not be too hard to do. I don't think we have anything like that, but I would think the businesses would look favorably on this. They don't really have to do anything, but the ones that have done things would get recognized, and they would hope to see some value from that. The last one, and I should point out this one and the commercial recognition program, both come from the sustainability plan. So the last one is to research, design, and/or develop a pilot program for energy performance disclosure. I interpret this as kind of like a home energy scorecard, except maybe one for commercial buildings. So it would have, to my mind, some of the same challenges that we would have with the home energy scorecard in terms of getting a variety of entities on board with it. Not to mention there are some technical challenges too. But on the positive side, we would not exactly be breaking new ground. Other communities have done this. Portland in particular has done it. I think Austin may have done one similar. And I'm sure we could learn a lot from them. But this one, I think, it would be a long-term program. I don't see us I could see us making progress over the next 9 to 12 to 18 months. I'm not sure we would complete it in that time frame. But on the other hand, if we feel this is important, given that it's going to take a while, we should get started. Okay, I've been talking too much. Sharon, I saw you had your hand up. Do you have some comments?
Unmute first. So the home energy scorecard, as well as the commercial, there are already tools that exist through EPA that they have. So it'd be a matter of like adopting and making it something that's standardly done. We don't have to create this from scratch. These things already exist. We'll make sure people are aware of that. And then on the commercial side, it almost needs to be a bifurcated approach because as most of you probably know, most businesses don't own their facilities. So for something that's a very quick payback, like lights, they're paying their own electric bill. We might be able to make headway on that. But for something that's more involved, like heating and insulating, you probably need to reach the owners of the properties.
One thing that Jake Swenson pointed out to me as a challenge for Concord with a home energy scorecard is that we've got CMLP and we have National Grid too. National Grid's supplying the gas, CMLP is supplying the electricity. Wasn't exactly clear to what extent we could get the data from National Grid to support that program. Might be a problem, might not, but I think it kind of falls into, well, at any rate, it is what it is.
So can I make
Brad?
a couple of comments? Now, the fact that you put the word disclosure in there means that this is a stick. I think this means that you want disclosure on sale of a building or disclosure on something. And so this would be something the business partnership would likely not be super happy with. But I think that doesn't mean it's not a good idea. Whereas the one on the residential side is definitely part of what we're talking about with Concord Heats Electric. And home energy scorecard is tied to the back of an energy audit.
Right.
And that energy audit comes from CMLP, or it may come from a BODE. And so it needs to be developed, but it's not something we can say, okay, we just developed this scorecard and here's the scorecard. It's part of a redesign of the energy audit process, which I think is really important. Because when people get an energy audit, especially from Energy New England, it's like this. Sharon can tell you, does this apply to, is this for my house? What do I do? It's, there's a lot of work to make that a good audit. But we're certainly have been talking about it a little bit as part of that. That Concord Heats Electric is an attempt to spin off a whole bunch of smaller projects, like fix the audit, education and outreach and stuff like that. Just anyway.
Well,
that's my.
I think so. On the home energy scorecard, I think there'd be opposite. I could be wrong, but I think there'd be opposition to this. I think realtors would not like it.
Doesn't matter.
But I see this as almost necessary long-term to, not even long-term, medium-term, to influence behavior. How can we convince people to do the things we want them to do?
There is-
yeah, there are some impediments such as financing and such that stand in the way, and we need to identify those and work on those. But in the end, what's going to motivate them to actually do this?
Peer pressure.
Yes, that's where this comes in. Yeah,
And
exactly.
that's one of the things, since we're all CMLP customers, you may not be aware that the Eversource and National Grid, I believe, added in their billing that you see not only your bill, but in your neighborhood, people around you, you're
Right.
better, equal, or not as good as average. Of course, they laugh about them, but the fact that they're laughing about them means that they're noticing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can tell you, just speaking firsthand and personally, some years ago, I saw a statistic for average home energy use across Massachusetts. I thought, where do I stand on this? I never knew that there was something I could compare against. And so I went and compared it, and I was aghast. And that specifically prompted me to go do some things. But the ability to look at this and figure out whether you're doing better or worse than your neighbor in general, I think is a very powerful thing.
Right. So in terms of the dividing line between CSEC and CAB, something like the researching and designing, commercial energy disclosures and stuff like that, where you want to know what's been done in across the state and what tools are things, that there are certain things like that might be a good CAB project. Whereas we are like maybe engaging those businesses, the ensuring that they know about programs. That sounds like something we can do. Kind of goes along with the difference between the communities. I
That
like
makes
a lot
sense.
of these things.
Jerry, Matt has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Matt.
Yeah, and of course I should probably just shut up because I'm just the liaison. So, but I just wanted to make a couple of comments. First of all, I do think that the Cooler Concord brand is an important asset that has been developed, and I would really hope, regardless of what strategy is used, that you somehow retain or capitalize upon that. And of course, there is some risk that if you switch from residential to commercial, you might, lose some of the momentum around that. But on the other hand, I do think that, as you pointed out, that the biggest potential is on the commercial side. And if you look a little deeper at some of the business associations in town, the business partnership is specifically the business property owners primarily. And so they have a different approach than those who are kind of the business owners that aren't property owners, that are tenants, and their wherewithal that they have to implement, the energy saving program. So maybe someone who's a tenant could change their bulbs, but in terms of the landlord or the owner of the property, they're the ones that would be making infrastructure investments. And so that's key. So I just hope that, it's a finite group of resources that you've got here. You can only do one or maybe two, but if two, it's got to be kind of sustaining on one side and the initiative on the other. It's a difficult challenge, but I do want to give you all credit that you have developed something here. It's not like you're having to start over. And I don't know, maybe I'm just saying that as an outsider. You all maybe know on the inside that, oh, well, we are not getting any hits on the website, or something like this. But there it was a pretty strong lasting impression that was made in 2017.
So in essence, you're kind of arguing for us to revitalize Cooler Concord, if I'm reading you.
As a brand, at least. I mean, as far as the technical strategy of what platform it's on or whatever, it's just that it's very rare to be able to locally build a recognizable brand. And
Right.
you know, if you leave that behind, it's just at your peril. When you talked about these other programs on the residential side, those brands were not, those taglines were not, you know, anything familiar to me. I would say that you made the biggest splash with the first one. Yeah, like Concord Goes. I've never heard of Concord Goes.
No,
Or Concord Heats Electric, or I haven't seen
that's
that.
just so Concord Heats Electric is a little ad hoc group that's been meeting just to strategize about, it's not a public facing thing at this
Okay.
point.
All right.
It's kind of Jan from the Light Plant, Sustainability Director, head of CAB and CSEC, and a couple of citizens. But that's, but you're right. So I like what you said.
So that is a project on its own, right?
Right. We even talked about, that was one of the things. So I wouldn't even say what that's a website, but that's an initiative also through the schools. It's a you know, you can dust off the website and make it good, but you can also, the Cooler Concord initiative originally was something where we engaged through schools to try to reach lots and lots of parents, and that could be a strategy. That's, I think, a very winning strategy.
So the goal, how would you describe the goal there, Brad, in terms of reaching parents? What, could you say that again?
Well, we're trying to reach beyond the choir by utilizing all the social channels, but the schools especially. And we haven't talked, this was before Lori Hunter that we did the Cooler Concord, and the superintendent at that time was very supportive and got all sorts of things going. So that's especially schools, I would write.
I think it's about engaging the kids and thereby reaching the parents, right? I mean, that's kind of what we had projects that would draw the kids in and make them interested and get them involved.
Right.
And by definition, then the parents are on board.
There's a little bit of our intention of your sustainable home now as well. We were thinking that could also be tied into the school curriculum, just as a kind of a presentation to teach people about stuff. But yeah.
I'm trying to remember, does that, your Sustainable Home Now brochure, does that have a Cooler Concord logo on it?
I can't remember.
We grab one and look.
Oh my gosh. Does it? I don't think so.
It probably doesn't.
I don't think it does. Maybe it should.
doesn't
Maybe
matter.
it should. Well, we've printed them now, of course.
Well, the second edition can.
Yeah. And Brad, you have the posters, right? I dropped off the posters.
Oh, I have a whole basement full of stuff.
So
Yeah.
that leaflet, we took that really lovely central graphic and made it into a big poster, like big, colorful, a lot of kid appeal, honestly. It was bright colors and a home. It's like everybody recognizes it instantly. There's nothing to, heat pumps can take a little while to understand what you're talking about. A home with images of rooms and how you can increase efficiency in those rooms by making changes. That was very immediate.
Yeah, I just looked at the brochure. It does not mention Cooler Concord.
Yeah.
I'm trying to formulate my thoughts here.
I mean, Jerry, you'd asked the question of whether we should try to do both concurrently or sequentially. You know, I think that's a key question. You know, residential or commercial. My own feeling is that doing them both at the same time, I mean, obviously it makes sense, and the more we can do, the better. But I think that's quite a big ask. I think maybe just kind of alternate them might be just easier. Just get stuck into one thing, and then, you know, a few months later do the other, because they're both super important.
Yeah.
I don't really agree with that.
Oh, okay.
Because I sort of think as I sort of think that working on the business side means developing relationships. It means understanding what businesses are doing, what buildings are out there, what the opportunities are. A couple of people on the committee could do that. Could like say, okay, we'll work away on the business side. Get to know the business partnership, and I think could make some headway there. It wouldn't be full court press on the business side compared to the residential side, say. But to alternate is like, oh, we're doing this for a while, and now we're not doing this. We're doing this, and
I guess my point was just like a sort of a bandwidth, like how much can we do? But yeah, you make a good point. You know, if a couple of people on the committee could handle that sector, then yeah. Ideally, I think we do it all, but it's just like what are we actually able to do?
Yeah, there's on these two sides, there's enough to keep us going for a number of years.
Mm-hmm.
And we should keep in mind we can do things together with people that are not on the committee.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's somebody from CAB that's really interested in business sector, and you know, we can kind of put heads together and divide it up in a way that makes some sense, I think.
Well, your description, Brad, of a way that we might start to engage businesses resonated with me. You know, that is, instead of planning some grand program here, that we set our sights much lower to just start some relationships. You know, get the word out a little bit, and learn, you know, from what we hear through those relationships. I mean, whatever we do, we got to start somewhere, and that almost sounds like the natural place to start. We really don't know much about the commercial sector, at least I don't. We could start, you know, maybe just by this middle one here, just begin with that, see what we learn from that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering whether the West Concord Advisory Council might have some ideas. I mean, they're certainly focused on downtown West Concord a lot.
Actually, I wanted to say that one of the challenges that I've seen at the ZBA and the planning board is the kind of lack of awareness about electrification that developers have. But just this past week at the ZBA meeting, a developer, Patrick Cleary, was presenting his project for 13B Commonwealth Ave, and made the commitment that it would have all electric power of its, you know, for the building. And so to me, that's just worthy of maybe founding this commercial recognition program. I mean, it's a relatively straightforward thing to do, and it could help highlight the benefits here, because it's at this point strictly voluntary. Unfortunately, we can't really impose much more, and so we really want to try to encourage people, and this would be a way to go.
Yeah.
I
like that.
But the
Matt,
big-
are you suggesting that we might try to do that before we attempt to engage with?
Well, it's something that, there's usually an annual cadence to a recognition program. So maybe it's for
Yeah.
this fiscal year, I just wanted to say that there is a way to execute against that, without, and you could do it under the Cooler Concord brand as, I'm just
Are they
saying
here?
it could help reinforce that.
I'll tell me when. as soon as-
So that's, you just made a very interesting comment to me, to the group about doing this under the Cooler Concord brand. If we set out as a goal or a target here of revitalizing this brand, and then defining those items underneath that, what does that mean? There could be that community, I'm sorry, the business recognition program. There could be, attempting to do a better job of integrating the various data that we have in different places, making it easier to find. We could maybe use it to do some of this promotion. I guess, well, maybe not. But at any rate, the Cooler Concord thrust might be I'm wondering if it might not be the rallying cry for our efforts. I know, Brad, you had suggested that site could use a lot more new content. I think you're on mute.
That site can use some new content, some updated. And that will probably always be the case that we can. It needs to be maintained. The main thing it needs is promotion. It needs getting out there and making public presentations, and that could involve your sustainable home, and it could involve the stuff we need. But it's kind of like a website's not any good unless somebody goes to it. So through the schools or through community organizations, you can meet with them and tell them about the things that are going on. So the Jan's event about home heating and stuff like that, that's turned into something more just for CMLP, but it's that kind of community engagement that would help there.
And writing editorials or whatever they're called for the Concord Journal reaches quite a few people.
Yeah.
Not as many as I'd like, but.
And we have the Cooler Concord newsletter, which has actually been one thing that has kind of ticked over, not necessarily regularly, but it still goes out from time to time with the Cooler Concord banner. It has its email database, right? So we have our community there. I don't know how big is that, Brad? I should know that.
There's about 800 names in that.
Well, there you go. That's a good start.
Not at all bad. They might have some of them maybe from out of town, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a good base there, honestly. I think, if we just revamp the content and add things in. And again, something like the coaches idea that you spoke about earlier, I don't see why that couldn't also be promoted through the Cooler Concord site. I mean, if you've got a good idea, put it on all the sites. Why not? It doesn't matter how people find their way to you, as long as you just keep spreading the word.
Right.
I like the idea of branding under Concord website, under the Cooler Concord website, and have also a commercial angle to it. The concern that I have with commercial, and when I 52, I was surprised by the 52% of the load. But then when you think about it, the challenge we're going to have is you have maybe a dozen very, very large commercial entities, and then a lot of very small ones. Right? Because you have the hospital, then you have Partners, then you have Welch's, and then you have the Marriott, and then you have the two pharmacies, CVS and Walgreens, which is basically out of town. And then you have a lot of small things where a lot of the people are more tenants as opposed to landlords.
Mhm.
So, I mean, it's something to be checked, right? But
Yeah.
maybe we'll affect potential addressable, reasonably addressable market is maybe 20% of the 52.
Yeah. Okay,
Well, hard to get- Right? That's something to look at.
Is anyone familiar with Plug Power that is based just down the street from me? And they have a facility, they've been fitting it out, and I believe that they are doing, fuel cell work there, actually powering up their fuel cells
So where is this?
on Winthrop Street. They just have been moving in over the past couple of months.
Yeah.
A lot of big
also
equipment.
trashology in West Concord, right? Which is also a strange thing.
I don't know anything about them at all. Do you know they're a fuel cell company?
Yeah,
Yes.
It's a public company. It's a big company.
Yeah. And I think that they have a lot of, localized facilities, but they have one here. And I do believe that one of the critical factors for a company like that is that, in order to produce their fuel cells, they need to be using clean power, because otherwise the whole thing isn't clean. So I think maybe maybe Concord's attracted them that way, but I have no information actually about them, but it seems really intriguing and might be relevant to this group.
Well, I think, what I'm kind of taking away from your comments here is that this is another case where we just don't know about the commercial sector. We haven't done anything with them. And it sounds to me we got to start somewhere. So, going back here, something like this to me seems like we ought to be able to do this without a whole lot of effort. Let's just get some information flowing. Let's meet some folks. Let's find out what their interests are, what their concerns are.
Mhm.
And that might be just a couple meetings with them, and CSEC representatives could attend and discuss with them and then come back and report to the committee. And I mean, that would be a big step forward for us. We're kind of flying in the dark here.
Mhm. I also think, Jerry, that point one here, ensure businesses know about available programs. That feels like we don't need to know an awful lot about like the businesses themselves, but we're just bringing information to them, and it's a sort of a one-to-one opportunity to kind of get to know, to have that conversation with them and start to get to know them and sort of get in the door, hopefully, and just say, look, here's some stuff that we think you might be interested in, but sort of no strings attached, and just get a relationship going.
Right. I mean, that
I don't think that
be,
requires a lot of information on our part. I think we could kind of do that tomorrow,
right. I mean, that could be part of the teaser to get something going with the business partnership, to say, look, we want to learn about you, but here we've got some information we'd like to share with you. Make sure that you all in the community know about this, because these are benefits for you.
Right. Wow.
Okay. Well, what I'm kind of thinking, listening to all this, trying to synthesize it is in some fashion, is that maybe this should be our big thrust. or at least the umbrella for what we're going to do.
Mhm.
And that we try and flesh this out. Of what does it mean to revitalize the website? What sort of initiatives do we want to take as part of that? How do we revive the newsletter? And I'm sure other things as we flesh it out, you know, promoting your sustainable home now may be part of that, or maybe the website becomes an avenue through which we promote opportunities through your sustainable home now. And then meanwhile, in parallel, we at least attempt some efforts here, some nascent sort of exploratory efforts around these first two items. How does that sound to folks?
Sounds good.
Sharon?
I was going to say, next year it will have been 5 years since the 2017 fair, right? So, and we had been planning to have a fair that got those beautiful flyers for. So maybe
Yeah.
that's something we had done the landscaping fair. We were looking at doing that next. You know, maybe that's
So
what to take on as a spring, a new coolest Concord.
so basically, as part of this effort, perhaps we have a fair next year, sometime that pulls a bunch of stuff together. Is that in essence what you're imagining?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I mean, I feel like that's a big part of our charge, is to have events like that. And we've been sort of trying to figure out what to do during the pandemic, but
Right.
hopefully by next year we'll be able to really do things.
So-
we had a big list of people who had committed to come to on May the 9th, 2020 fair, but which didn't
Oh.
happen.
Right.
It still hasn't happened.
Right. So maybe we restart that and aim for May 2022.
And remember too that the original Cooler Concord Fair was a roaring success from what
It
I
was
know. I mean, that's when I kind of got connected with CSEC. So I was volunteering there that day, but I wasn't part of any of the organizing of it. But it was huge and it was terrific and very successful. So that's what probably brought a lot of those 800 names into the
Mhm.
And the landscaping fair was very well received. People were like, "Oh, you're going to do this again next year?" And
I know.
and it's like, I don't think we have it in us to do that every year, but
So is there anyone on the committee who was part of that directly?
I was. I
Okay,
mean,
good.
I was participated. I was a brand new member of CSEC in the 2017 Cooler Concord Fair. So I wasn't. I mean, Brad was much more of an organizer, and had this sort of scorecard that he developed, and I was sort of supervised the transportation section of the fair. And then I played a big role in the landscaping fair, and was also part of the planning of the fair that didn't happen last year. So I'd be happy to work on that kind of thing again.
Okay. Well, I think maybe we're beginning to see a little bit through the fog here. This is beginning to make some sense, and I think in terms of issues and concerns we've talked about. I'm thinking maybe the next step here is to sort of prepare a straw man proposal of what this means. And then to discuss that next meeting. Does that sound like the right process here?
Yeah, maybe it's also a good idea for us all to kind of take a look at the Cooler Concord website. I mean, is there still a Cooler Concord website? Just see what is up there,
Yeah.
what is sort of refresh our minds of like what we've done in the past, and with all this now, front of mind about where we want to go.
All right. So, all right, with that in mind, let me suggest the following, that everyone take a homework assignment to look at the Cooler Concord website as usually suggested. Take a look with an eye towards what seems to work well. Where does it seem to fall down? What ideas might we have specific ideas might we have to improve it? And meanwhile, I'll take an action item to prepare a straw man proposal for our next meeting of what this might look like in more detail. And maybe Karen, maybe you can work with me on that, because I know you had expressed some interest in
Absolutely.
putting a straw man proposal together. Anyone else could do that too. Karen in particular had mentioned that. Okay.
Good.
Any other comments or thoughts on this topic, on Cooler Concord or our strategies, before we move on to a couple more items? Okay.
Good discussion.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think this has been a very good discussion. I wasn't really sure how this would go, but I wanted to throw some things out to start a brainstorm, and I appreciate everyone's willingness to do just that. Okay. The next item on the agenda is the liaison assignments and responsibilities. And I have a slide on that. I took an action item from the last meeting to codify explicitly some responsibilities, just so that we all know what we're expecting. So I think we've talked about most of these things before, but I just sort of put it down explicitly in front of us, that the primary role of a liaison is communication, bidirectionally, both to and from CSEC. So a CSEC member who's a liaison to another committee would listen in on what that committee is doing, report back to CSEC, but also report to that committee as appropriate what CSEC is up to, or what's on our minds. The second bullet, I guess I've already kind of mentioned, well, I mentioned part of that. Attend and observe other groups' activities for the purpose to raise awareness within CSEC of what those activities are and how they might affect us. I think the main one there, the two big ones, well, there are several. I'll get to the several. But I think it's important to know what certain other groups are doing so that we try to, at a minimum, be in touch. And that being in touch means coordinating where it's appropriate. I think to date, we've done stuff pretty much on our own. However, we do work with Janice Setti from CMLP, and of course, Kate Hanley and whoever her replacement will be. So there's likely to need to be some coordination between those groups and CSEC. And then lastly is to provide a brief verbal report to CSEC during each of our meetings. And by brief, I'm thinking 5 minutes or less, so that we get the essence of what's happening. We don't necessarily need the whole book, but we get it described briefly, and so our committee can move on to our main agenda. Does this seem like it's on the mark? Any revisions that we think we would want to see? I'll take this, the silence as agreement.
Mhm.
In terms of assignments, the groups that I think we want to liaise with would be, or at least the ones that initially come to my mind, are CAD, CMLP, and the EV working group. Are there others? Does the planning board make any sense, or is that a little too much of a tangent? Karen, it looked like you might be nodding.
Oh, yes, sorry, on mute again, so you don't hear my typing. I think it is helpful to have somebody attend the planning board meetings. There's often conversations about electric development in new development. And I know Janet's reported on a number of things that have come up before the planning board, like the soil removal
Right.
issue here in West Concord. And so at least in terms of awareness, I think it would be a good idea.
Also, it just occurred to me that there's other groups like, although I think these may be down their road already, the library project, CMS project.
That brings up an interesting, Kate was a member of the middle school building committee. So is that a gap? Although I think there's some, is there like a special, I think there's other very energy minded individuals there.
There's even a sustainability subcommittee of the,
That's what I was
Yeah,
trying to remember.
of the middle school building committee. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's someone who's like a sustainability professional, Matt Root, who
Yeah.
is chairing that.
yeah,
So maybe that's reasonably well covered, even without Kate.
And then it's expected that whoever is hired as the new sustainability director will take the slot that Kate had.
But sort of more broadly, there's also green teams with all the schools, and I don't know whether that, there should be a general sort of Concord Public School liaison. I don't know, just to kind of like keep tabs. I mean, it just feels like that's the generation that's going to hopefully save us all, Should keep in with them.
right. I think that's a good idea. I remember a couple of years ago talking with Kate Hanley, and prompted by some comments she made, which I don't remember specifically, but the image I had was, as a committee, we could be fairly influential if we had our fingers, so to speak, in a variety of projects. That is, we're there to speak up for sustainability when the group may not have those ideas on their mind. Maybe a good example, that's a planning board that Karen's pointing out, that, they've got their own agenda, they've got their own work to do, and they may or may not have sustainability on their mind. But if we have a liaison involved there, the liaison could bring that up. Yeah, go ahead. Was that you, Julie?
No, I just said that's a really good point. I don't know, was that covered by your kind of liaison sort of that, just to make sure that sustainability is always
That wasn't
part of
on
the
it.
conversation?
You're right.
Oh, I just think it's a good point you made. Mhm.
Okay, so I think the challenge with all this is finding the time to do all this stuff. I know, Matt, you commented, you're a liaison from the select board to a bunch of committees. I can't quite imagine how much time that all takes. So I think maybe the way to go about this is that we have liaisons to groups where individuals have some interest in working on that. And, Janet, you've been involved with the EV working group for a while now. And I think that's, you correct me if I'm wrong, but you have a personal interest there, which I think makes that easier.
Yeah, that's true, I suppose.
Doug has, I think in our last meeting, suggested he'd like to be a liaison to CAB. Would anyone like to be a liaison or at least try out being a liaison to any of these other groups? It's additional work, but.
Well, I'm interested in both the light plant and the green teams, although I think that Brad kind of has that covered. So I don't know, maybe if that's true, then the library would be. But yeah, I would well, I think the green teams or the CMLP would be my preference. My first two choices, and third would be library if we feel like those two are already pretty well handled.
Yeah. Why don't we start with you checking out the green teams and seeing what there is to do there.
And I'm starting from zero, so.
Right. Well, I'm at zero on this too. So I don't know if this is going to be, there's not much to do, or this is some tremendous opportunity, but why don't you check that out?
Okay.
And then we'll see how things go with these others if someone wants to step up. But thank you for volunteering for that. Okay. Next item on the agenda is just a brief discussion about dates and times for subsequent meetings. So our next meeting is currently scheduled for Thursday, September 16th. It's at 3:30. This is what Kate Hanley had set up some time ago. I'm tempted to move that to 7 p.m. again. Does anyone have any objections? Oh, Karen, yeah.
It's not really an objection per se, but just a comment that according to my calendar, that's Yom Kippur.
I'm sorry, say that again.
According to my calendar, that's Yom Kippur. The Jewish holiday.
That's kind of a problem for me.
Then it should be on your calendar.
Yeah, hang on. Let me look at one of my calendars. You're right. Thank you, Sharon. I would not be able to attend. Oh, I really didn't want to do another doodle poll, but I'll do it. What I'd hope to get to at some point, maybe next month, is to get on a regular schedule from 7 to 9 p.m. so that we can have them all on our calendars and not have to put extra effort in to figure out where we're meeting. But because the 17th is Yom Kippur, that I'll want to shift that. So stay tuned for another doodle poll. I guess we've got 10 minutes for public comment. I don't know if we have any attendees. I don't see any. Let's stop this. Let me just check and see. I don't think we have any public attendees. All right, so we have 10 minutes to talk about anything else we might want to talk about, or end early. So let me just open it up and say, anybody have anything else on their minds or they want to add?
Okay. I've noticed several of my neighbors adding gas service. I don't know, but I wonder if that might in part be a reaction to article, whatever it was that passed, saying that new construction couldn't have gas. And that led me to wondering if it would be possible to add a delay where we have like a demolition bylaw delay, that when someone asks for gas service, that they're like starts a process and you have, you don't get it. I'm sure you don't get it tomorrow anyway, but that there's somebody, the heat pump coach or somebody gets notified that has happened, and they're reached out to say, what about that? I mean, I better to get them even before they get to that point.
Yeah.
But as a stopgap, maybe we could.
So are you thinking of a
there
sort of a regulatory delay or a just talk to us before you do anything rash kind of delay?
Yeah, I don't know where we'd end up, but something like one of those. I mean, ideally, we'd figure out, or we've been talking about trying to identify customers who use oil. Like if we could find who uses gas, then by default, most of the others, and we should probably have a way of knowing if they have electric heat because their electric rate use goes way up in the winter. So I know it's not real easy to get that information, but it'd be better to proactively reach out to people that are using oil.
Yeah.
But maybe we could also understand the process by which when somebody says, I want gas, and they call it National Grid, I'm sure they don't get gas tomorrow. Yeah, they probably have to apply for a permit. They have to call, there's already some process there.
Right.
And can we insert some, wait, let's talk to you before you do this.
So does anyone know, I presume they need a permit from the town too.
Yeah, I haven't looked into it at all. It's just an idea.
Because I'm thinking that might be the first place for us to start would be to figure out who in town, what organization in town needs to approve this. Then we could talk to them and understand how they currently do things and see if we can't get inserted into that process. I know this is a complete tangent, but it is related a little bit. The White Pond Advisory Committee that I was on for several years, they're in the process for permit approval for additions to homes in the White Pond area. They don't have any formal responsibility there, but the building department listens to the committee's recommendations to some extent. So I bring this up because I know they have a connection into the building committee. And so when the building committee sees a request for approval of some addition, and it's in the White Pond neighborhood, the building committee alerts the White Pond Advisory Committee, oh, please take a look at this. And so we might be able to do something like that, maybe. Don't know if it's in our charter, but on the other hand, we could alert others that this is something that might be a good idea to pursue.
I think it's a great idea. I like what Sharon's talking about. I think it's really, really, it's an opportunity, right? It's an opportunity. People are already like at the point of change, and that's where we want to be there.
Right. And hopefully before they buy that new gas furnace, we have to be there.
Yeah.
Right.
And these are changes that are made like every 10, 15, 30 years, whatever, right? So, you've got to, when that moment comes, you need to take advantage.
Okay.
And it's just informational, right? We're just sort of saying, hey, we want to just tell you about something that you might also want to consider, and
right.
for reasons.
Right. Right, there's no requirement yet.
No.
Right. And actually putting in that gas line is really expensive.
Hmm.
Right.
So if you've already got electricity coming into your house, and the running of the heat pumps is little more than actually gas. So
Yeah.
it's a win-win. I
Right,
think.
and maybe it could prompt, if they haven't already had one. I mean, I would think National Grid would be wanting to do this too, but they're, you know, two different arms of the company, to like, oh, let's give you an energy audit. But if you're not a gas customer, they don't give you an energy audit. So let's make you a gas company and then give you an energy audit.
Yeah.
So I can see how it doesn't happen, but maybe it could prompt getting a Energy New England.
But
Yeah.
Eversource and National Grid want to sell you their gas. So they do not want you
Well, they
to.
do and they don't. I mean, all of, you know, they sell electricity and gas, and I think they all see the handwriting on the wall and are trying to figure out what they're going to do in the new future. But
Well, let me
gas salespeople want to sell gas.
I'll see if I can contact someone in the building department and see if I can get some basic understanding of that process and report back and see where we
Matt,
go
do you
with
have your
that.
hand up? Matt, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to just say it's probably old news for some of you, but I just read today about Petaluma, California banning construction of any new gas stations or any fuel pumps. So, you know, again, it's one of those things where, hey, if you're committed to becoming net zero, then, you know, you're not going to be adding new auto fueling stations, you know, gas pumps with traditional auto fuel. So it may be just symbolic because I don't see a lot of people around Concord adding new gas stations, but it's just, it does make a statement, you know?
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I was just looking at our zoning bylaw at our use regulations, because I mean, the most straightforward way is that the zoning districts would not allow that use. You know, and so any existing ones would be grandfathered, but you know, any new ones could not be constructed. But unfortunately, it just says auto service station, so it doesn't really call out. So there would have to be a new use defined. It would be a little more complex thing to do at town meeting. But
Yeah,
just an idea.
I'm kind of thinking that if we could do something that does not involve going to town meeting, you know, we might be able to get moving more quickly.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Comments, questions? Going once, going twice?
I
I'll
move
enter-
to adjourn the meeting. I think it's the next thing that happens.
Yep. And do we have a second somewhere?
Second.
Julie seconds. Janet made the motion. Julie seconds that we adjourn. All in favor, say aye, raise your hand.
Aye.
And looks like we're unanimous. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
I think
you.
this was a great
Good.
meeting.
Good meeting.
I'll be in touch with the doodle poll. And again, thank you, Sharon. And we'll go forward. Have a great rest of the summer, everybody.
Thank you too.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.